Welcome, everybody, to the 31st Annual Marion Chase Foundation Lecture. I am Dr. Marcia Leventhal, and it is my great privilege and honor to be able to introduce you today to our keynote speaker, Dr. Eileen Serlin. Dr. Serlin and I have been friends and colleagues for close to 50 years. That is amazing when I even think of that number. Oh, what a privilege and pleasure to observe an individual growing from student. Just a small aside, Dr. Serlin was in one of the earliest classes in dance movement therapy at Hunter in their new master's program. But to observe someone to grow from student to an esteemed colleague, professor, and an international representative and symbol of how far and developed one can unfold with determination while still honoring their roots and developing into a multi-layered and multi-accomplished contributor both to society and to our field with creativity, higher consciousness, and of course with resilience. Eileen's accomplishments are great, with success and achievements in so many allied ventures within the mental health field, never allowing her roots in dance to become subsumed, but rather to be forefront, no matter the endeavor. Dr. Serlin has allowed herself to flourish within the highly competitive field of psychology without for a minute losing her connection to and champion of dance movement therapy and the creative arts therapies. Actually, in 2019, Dr. Serlin received one of the highest honors given by the American Psychological Association's Society for Humanistic Studies. She received the Rollo May Award. And besides being a past president of the San Francisco Psychological Association and also a past president of the Division of Humanistic Psychology of the American Psychological Association, Dr. Serlin received the Distinguished Humanitarian Contribution Award from the California Psychological Association. Dr. Serlin's contribution to literature, as well as all these other achievements, is so very prolific. She has more than 100 articles and book chapters to her name, as well as being the editor of several key books concerning art and psychotherapy, trauma, and existential group practice. Oh, really, her writings are so prodigious. And that is in addition to her international teaching schedule and her humanitarian work and a multitude of webinars concerning our current COVID-19 life and changes, which we are all dealing with. And of course, her own personal spiritual practice using dance movement to enhance and to develop. As a professor, Dr. Serlin has taught in numerous universities and institutions worldwide, really too many for me to mention at this time, but she is an Associate Distinguished Professor of Psychology at the California Institute of Integral Studies. Besides her teaching and everything else I've mentioned, believe it or not, she's also produced films and videotapes on so many topics, including her work with Laura Perls, who, as you know, was Fritz Perls' co-founder of Gestalt Therapy, on her research with breast cancer survivors, on victims of trauma, and a whole variety of teaching methods with groups internationally. Wow, truly, if one were to define and distinguish a Renaissance woman, I would imagine that Eileen Serlin would be a model to which we might all attempt to strive. That is, if you stay positive, don't get caught in all the obstacles and blocks that will come your way, and believe me, they will, and just keep on keeping on. I cannot imagine what Dr. Serlin will be offering this world in this next decade, but I sure am eager to be around to watch what happens next. So please, won't you join me now in welcoming this distinguished and clearly humble innovator and contributor to our profession and society in general, Let's welcome her to this stage today as she presents her talk and film, Trauma Informed Dance Movement Therapy, Real Life Trainings with Syrian Refugees, China and US COVID-19 Hotline. Welcome, Dr. Serlin. We are so pleased.
Hello, everyone. I'm so aware that this is on Zoom, and I'm trying so hard to think of the faces that I'm addressing now. And I want to tell you how much I miss seeing you. I was so looking forward to being together in Montreal, to accepting this tremendous honor, to dancing together and hugging. But like so many real life situations we're all facing right now, we have to make the best of it with Zoom. I want to start by thanking such dear and longtime friends for this remarkable honor. First, my intrepid friend, Marcia Leventhal, with whom I've shared so many adventures. Starting with Irmgard, we created our collective in the 70s. We crossed paths through Gestalt and traipsed around China and Istanbul. And then a thank you for so many other women who I've respected and admired for so long, and who are dedicated to carrying on the vision of Marion Chase. Jane Wilson Cathcart, Sharon Chaiklin, Anne Lone, and Susan Kleinman. As I discover ways of working with trauma in global settings, I actually find that my early trainings with Marion Chase approaches at Hunter College have become a staple of the work that I share with you today for this convention's theme of global work. This training also fits so naturally into my early days as a folk dancer, from the Habonim youth group in Israel when I was 14, to studying Israeli folk dance with the great Fred Burke at the 92nd Street Y in New York in 1964, then having the 92nd Street Y becoming the site of a new and flourishing dance therapy program under Dr. Miriam Berger more than 50 years later, seeing the spirals of time, connections, and friendships. Through Jungian training and analysis, my growing understanding that archetypes are not static, but movements in life, making these beautiful archetypal forms, patterns of process. Of course, beginning with the circle and the spiral, just as Irmgard always used to say, ancient forms, so ancient and so basic that they appear in most cultures and therefore help build bridges across cultures. It was therefore natural to build not just on those forms with intergenerational trauma in a global setting, but to keep expanding this. How do communities express their losses of home, family, and culture? Can working within the familiarity of their culture help to bring healing? Over the course of the last 20 years, I've had the unfortunate opportunity to get more experience working with intergenerational trauma, starting in Israel in 1986 through Dr. Vivian Marcos Spicer and Lesley University. It was obvious there how the arts were already a powerful part of the healing process. After that, I had the opportunity to bring some of these healing arts to Istanbul and then to Jordan to work with Syrian refugees. Using local dance forms and music, I was able to co-create opening and closing rituals for the conference and introduce movement into the women's support groups. I had a chance to make a training film in Jordan since our intention was not to stay, but to help train the local medical and social work students. My part was to work with the training manual to describe how to lead simple support groups and how to bring in movement as one of the modalities. Since video is more effective than text, I developed a proposal for training film. And with the help and support of the Marion Chase Foundation, I was able to create a training film that would teach some of the healthcare professionals in Amman, Jordan, a simple way to bring movement into their groups. And here is the film. Hello, I'm Dr. Eileen Serlin. I'm a psychologist and I'm a dance therapist. For the last 5 years, I've been going with my colleague Steve Olween to Amman, Jordan, to work with the Syrian refugees at the invitation of Dr. Ayat Nashwan from Yarmouk University.
This is Dr. Ayat Nashwan. I'm Associate Professor at the Department of Sociology and Social Work. I think movement therapy is one of the most creative ways that we can teach our students to have it as intervention tool to deal with vulnerable communities, including refugees and disadvantaged Jordanians.
Our philosophy is based on local capacity building. It's based on being able to come into a region and instill the local population with the skills that they need for their own healing. And we do that by providing direct skills training and psychosocial skills that range from coping skills and basic intervention all the way up to what we would consider the higher level psychotherapy skills.
This will be a short film. It's just illustrating some of the key points of this work. This video will give you an overview. You should be able to do a simple group, and we also intend to provide follow-up supervision for those trainees who will be introducing this into their work. So now let's walk through 3 basic concepts of dance therapy and why it may be relevant here. One is why the arts, and why working with the body and working with cultural trauma is important. Number 2, that this has a similar structure to most support groups. And number 3, expectations that the trainees can incorporate some of the elements from this group into their ongoing work. You know, since I'm a folk dancer and do dances from different countries, I was particularly intrigued by some of the dances that these refugees do, the debka and some belly dance, and realized how big a loss losing their culture was, and how important practicing their culture is in terms of making new friends, making a new community for themselves in their dislocation. So bringing the arts in, number 1, helps with this cultural loss that they have and reaffirms kind of their identity. But also the arts help bring in working with trauma, because people often can't express emotions directly. And we saw that when we tried to use normal international trauma checklists, they just did not respond to the words that are very Western words. Many countries around the world are collectivist countries, not individual, and a lot of our Western trauma methods are geared to individual, kind of Western-speaking peoples. So the arts can really cross cultures very easily. It's easy to go into another culture and through their music and their dance begin to communicate how they see life and what's happened, tell a story. So we have the same structure as a support group. It's got a beginning, a middle, and end. It's about the same time frame. They tend to go for about an hour and a half. Optimal number of participants is somewhere between 10 and 15. You can work with more. You need a bigger room. The structure really has, you create a safe space. You help build connections among group members. You enforce confidentiality, privacy, respect for all members, certain guidelines. This shares all those norms that support groups do. It just introduces elements from the body and from art, music, that can carry out and develop themes in ways that words sometimes can't. And people can incorporate this into their ongoing support groups. So we don't expect the volunteers necessarily to do all dance therapy groups, but some have already begun to introduce some of these elements into what might be a more traditional group support format. It has to be said that there are licensing and credentialing requirements for dance therapists. We are not training dance therapists here. We are teaching elements of dance movement therapy to people who are really learning and being trained to be group leaders, to run support groups, so they can bring in some of these elements into their own work, hopefully in ways that are comfortable to them.
So now we're about to see a group in process. We see them going through the 3 basic elements of the group, doing a warm-up, developing a theme, and doing a cool down. These, though, are medical students. These are not the refugees who could not be filmed for this occasion. But you will see the trainees actually going through these 3 stages in the group.
Notice your breathing. Is it fast or slow?
The warm-up is basically literally to warm up the body, and then sometimes words and emotions can flow. So we start sitting in chairs in a circle, often start just tapping feet to the rhythm, go through sequentially body parts.
Just warm up our feet.
Often feet on the ground to get grounding and strength.
Let's just begin slow to stretch the body.
So we really focus on building strength, centering, stability.
And just feel how your body wants to stretch in the chair.
Before we get off into any kind of emotion or expression.
Okay. And then one thing that often feels good is just shake out any tension. That's often a very good thing to do. You can throw it in the middle, like you say, get rid of negative stress.
The warm-up serves 2 purposes really for the group leader. One is literally to warm up the group, the bodies, the energy level in the room. The second is diagnostic, as the group leader observes at that point who's in the group, what's going on, what kind of themes seem to be present, and then uses that information to develop the second part of the group, which is how to work with the themes.
You say, what do you want to take for yourself? We had that before. Peace, inner peace, what else?
Love.
Love. Happiness.
The second part then has to do with developing the theme. So the same thing in a verbal group, it may be dealing with sadness or some issue that somebody in the group has brought in. Same thing happens in movement, but we'll do it in movement. So we might see in the movement, for example, and I did in this situation see often people who had learned not to trust other people and were scared to move out into space, to extend themselves in any way.
So we have a leader and a follower. So anything I do, she does. Okay, so try with your partner too.
Sometimes props can help. So that's when I may introduce balloons, because if you find that somebody flicks a balloon in your direction and you hit it back over to them across the circle, you're beginning an interaction without actually face-to-face fear. It's a very indirect way of working with things like making connections with other people. So during the theme, the role of the group leader is really to kind of support the emerging theme, not to decide what it is. We're using props to elicit and intensify emotions. The intended outcome of this is really to help people rebuild strength, resilience, and express emotions but not get stuck there. The question is really what's healing. If you can move emotions through your body, they tend to get unstuck, which is why we literally move, get the blood flowing, get the circulation going, get the thoughts and the emotions flowing, and then hopefully clear a space for some more constructive thinking about what might be ahead. The last part of the session is a cool down, time for reflection, finding meaning, and maybe sharing the importance of what happened and internalizing it.
And you want to debrief, so back to normal before people go back out of the door. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to leave them in a state of vulnerability at risk and ask them to go out. So you come back.
And then the cool down is where people take time to understand what happened in the group and to share with each other some of the key points of what went on in the group. And so you should end in a way that helps people make the transition back outside the group and not leave them hanging with strong emotions. So the group leader really needs to learn how to bring the group to a cool down stage. I like to think of it as an emotion that's more internal, and then you externalize it with art. You draw it, you dance it, you get it out, you express it, and then you sort of come back to yourself. That balance between standing on your own feet as an individual but still feeling the support of a circle is crucial. Our bodies are our tools in this kind of work, and you really feel by feeling with others. So, in effect, you're taking their emotions into yourself. There's got to be a way to sort of purge at the end of the day, or disidentify, to say, but that's not me, this is me, and to come back to your own. We know that caregivers now often suffer from what's called secondary trauma or burnout. So we really want to pay attention to the caregivers, that they can use this kind of help as well. We have some portraits, some people speaking about how the work has helped them.
I am Muhammad.
One of the caregivers does talk about working with victims of torture.
Now in the Center for Victims of Torture.
And then how can he go home and have dinner with the family after that?
I feel there is too much feelings inside myself, and honestly sometimes I feel I cannot control these feelings. I cannot express these feelings.
So you really have to find ways to separate from the work you've been doing all day and get yourself ready for your own life again.
Because honestly I didn't have too much experience in the dance therapy, but honestly for me it helped me. How to, these 3 days I learned how to help myself to continue help my clients.
Okay, so this is Sarah. I'm from Jordan. I just want to say how what dance really means to me. It means so much to me. I just feel like really when I dance or something, like I feel so energized. I feel like so high. I feel like I'm expressing my emotions, my character, and everything. Dance is really a great thing.
I've observed through travels as a folk dancer through many countries the power of communities singing, dancing together, and the importance of community building. So I like to think of the progression as working from the individual, where the focus is really on stability, resilience, grounding, support, having people work with their own emotions, and feeling strength and security. And then we begin to work with boundaries and helping them connect with other people, work with issues that come up around that. And then we also work on the group level, where the group as a whole is moving together. There's some kind of rhythmic synchrony that without words you feel like you're part of something, which is really lost when you're ripped from your community or hometown. So we try to make the group like a little family for the time being. And then we go beyond that, back to the community.
I'm running, I never knew then what I know now. That the fruits, they always come in, but you can't go around just knocking them down.
These are children who are Jordanian, Syrian. We're all in it together. The medical students are there, the volunteers are there, local community members come, parents come. So we try not to stigmatize them as the ones who have trauma and need our help, but that we're all together doing some community building. We found that by having these concerts and get-togethers at the end is a way to bring us all back together, kind of at the same level again of friendship and good feelings.
Sometimes I lay under the moon, I thank God I'm breathing, and I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for
Working in other cultures presents challenges of understanding levels of cultural complexity and communication traditions. On the other hand, these challenges were also joyful opportunities for cultural exchange and good humor. Traveling to the south of China, sharing dances with the Bai people, improvising with students by the sea, by the Great Wall, learning Sufi dances in Istanbul while bringing dance therapy to people in a psychiatric hospital there and in a senior center, and finding that Mayim became one of my students' favorite warm-up are for unforgettable experiences that give me hope over and over about the basic goodness of human beings and the importance of culture's role in mental health. Now, I would like to do some screen sharing and just share some of these images with you to take in the incredible beauty and lushness and colors and vividness of the countryside of the Bai people, Bai women. This is where we all stayed and danced together, improvising, teaching each other our dances, walking down the street, dancing by the sea, dancing at the Great Wall, Istanbul at night, magical, psychiatric hospital, senior center in Istanbul, and the origin of Turkish dance and belly dance. Then COVID hit China. Suddenly, I couldn't go to China in person, and all interactions had to be by Zoom, including our training program and supervision. In the supervision group, I was hearing cases of the psychologists and counselors who were asked to staff their university hotlines and were facing new roles as short-term hotline providers. This was the beginning of the pandemic, where people were newly shut into enclosed and often very small spaces. Their shock, panic, and fear sometimes manifested as aggression toward others, and the hotline counselors needed short-term tools to help them. So we developed a film based on embodied responses to dealing with COVID-related trauma. We're in the process of making others and learning about the interesting question of how to use a disembodied medium to bring forth an embodied response in others. One way is to simplify the training so it can be used for a one-time session or longer. In this case, the basic issues to be addressed included normalizing, grounding, creating safe space, boundaries and control of the boundaries, creativity, resilience, and regrowth. Some of the videos use a longer narrative in which the basic issues are addressed, but since the university students can only use the hotline only a short time, sometimes a half an hour, this video is being used to help them and their counselors. Hello, I'm Dr. Eileen Serlin. I'm a psychologist and I'm a dance movement therapist from the United States, from San Francisco. I've been invited to come talk to you and share some of what I think might be helpful as you face this very distressing virus and all the consequences that you're living with today. I have been in China. I've been working in China since 2008, both as a psychologist and as a dance movement therapist. We have a training program at the China Institute of Psychology in Beijing. So there I've really come to very close professional, personal, collegial relationships with some of the psychologists who have invited me to offer some input into the situation to be of any help. I come as both a psychologist and a dance movement therapist because I do believe that some of the things that should be very normal for people who are dealing with life-threatening challenges, facing death, facing not trusting others. Are you going to get contaminated? Do you feel paranoid? Do you feel scared?
Do you feel depressed? Do you feel confined with your family? You feel frustrated? So these are reactions to be expected. And I guess the question is how best to deal with it. So I understand that there's a very hardworking hotline in place, and a lot of the counselors and psychologists whom I know are busy offering services night and day. What I'd like to be able to offer, and which may be in addition to this, are some embodied practices that I do as a dance movement therapist, because much as the thinking and the emotions feel like they're in the mind, they're really in the body. So tension and frustration and fear of touching or being touched are obviously, the body needs to relax and feel secure again, and to develop the strength and the confidence to heal and feel secure at times when the world is moving fast around and it's full of uncertainty. I remember actually when I worked during the earthquake here in San Francisco, one of the things that parents would ask me all the time, or the media, was what to do about the children. The children always saying, Mommy and Daddy can control everything and keep us safe. And what happens when Mommy and Daddy can't? It may be that your child is asking these questions now, but there's a truth to be faced, which is life is not always certain and stable. All the more reason to be able to say, we do our very best. It usually is sometimes, though, we have to find our own strength and our own resiliency and our own stability in order to better face the inevitable challenges that life faces. So this talk will really focus on some embodied way of cultivating that kind of resilience and stability in the body. The first thing is how to work with emotions. Emotions really flood us, and research shows that we're in confined spaces and we can't express our frustration or our anger or our grief. We tend to lash out at other people. So one of the things is kind of how to work with your emotions as they get unbearable. So the first thing is to find, really, instead of reacting to everybody, to each other's emotions, to find a quiet place inside that doesn't react, where you can recharge yourself. If you can't literally leave your room and you can't even close the door, how do you recharge so you can continue to cope? So the first is, I like to use the possibility of nature, which has always been helpful to us human beings to understand powerful forces. So when I think about images from nature, we've often heard sort of be still like a mountain, which is a powerful image to give you gravitas and weight, and so you can't fly around. Another one is a tree. It's used all over the world, the tree of life. It's used because it's very strong and it can weather storms. So, and here in Chinese, I've seen in China some very beautiful forests and some beautiful trees. So bringing nature inside is always a good thing if you're in an apartment. So if you want to try this guided imagery, if you want to just, wherever you're sitting for a minute, first of all, imagine that your feet are touching the ground, and from your feet like this, you want to really feel the ground, even in an apartment. Feel the ground under you, because when we are anxious, we tend to sort of fly around and not be in control. So we want to get control back. So the first thing is to stabilize yourself, feet on the ground. Now, one way to do, start this imagination with the tree, is to imagine that from your feet are roots growing down into the ground. Way, way down, like securing you. So feel it getting nourishment. Roots from your feet. And then you feel yourself sitting in the chair and you feel your weight. So you're giving yourself to the chair and you're letting the chair hold you up.
so you don't have to use all your muscles, which when we're anxious, we tend to tighten up. And when we're scared, because fight or flight, we want to run, but we can't, so we just freeze. So how do you relax that? Well, one way is when you ground yourself, then you can let go, you can release your muscles and just let the chair hold you up so you can let your muscles relax. Now imagine your spine is a big tree and it's very solid, and you have the tree and then you have your roots down into the ground. And maybe you have branches, but mostly you're this big tree. And as you've been there, and you've been there 100 years, you've been there hundreds of years, and it's a blue sky and there's birds, and then all of a sudden you see dark clouds on the horizon, and it's coming closer, and then you feel the winds come. But you're a tree, you're solid, and you're breathing, and you keep breathing. And then the clouds come closer and it starts raining and the winds come, and you feel your roots and you feel your tree and you keep breathing. And pretty soon the winds are going all around you and the storm's getting higher and higher, and you feel in the middle of the storm there's this nice quiet, stable place where you're watching and you're listening to the storm, but it's not carrying you away. You're stabilizing yourself. And the storm goes and goes and you're stabilizing yourself. And you're breathing, and you're breathing. And then the storm gets quieter, and you're breathing, and you keep breathing. And then the storm starts going off again, and you're breathing. And then the sun comes out, and the sky is blue, and you're breathing, and you're breathing. And you've been there, and you will be there, and you're stable, and you're part of nature, and you're not getting caught up or swept up. So when you feel like you're flying around or you can't control emotions or outbursts, bring it back to this center and stable. So you're not either lashing out and hurting people, hurting yourself, taking it out in emotions. So develop that. Now there's a third way that involves even more of the body. So if you're willing, because also we need exercise if we're cooped up. So here are some simple exercises that you can try that will keep your body a little more flexible and less tense. So the first thing is, again, to stand. So if you stand, your feet should be, this is the most stable position. Feet right below your shoulders, so you have a good base of support. You don't want to topple over. You want to be stable. So the first thing you do is to stabilize yourself simply by, in ballet it's called a plie. You bend your knees and you come up. You keep all this relaxed and you just control what you can control in life, which right now is your legs. So you really concentrate on just what muscles move. Probably haven't used them in a while. So start waking up your legs, and you get, the lower you are, the more stable you are close to the earth. Okay, so you stable this part. Once you're stable, you can start stretching your upper part, because maybe you've been sitting, maybe you've been scrunched up, so begin to open up your breathing. And making circles. Big breath, big breath. You can lean back and even open your heart. Big breath, big circles. Till you're breathing slow and steady. Feel your own rhythm, your own breath. In and out. In and out. Till your body feels nice and strong. And then the next part is you've got a strong
flexible body. Now we want to create a safe space. So we're worried about viruses and germs and being touched and food and money and jobs and family, and we want to kind of not just inside here, but we want to create a place where we feel kind of safe. So it's called a safety bubble or a safe space. And truly, so when you breathe out, we all live, and so this is as far as I can reach, that's as far as I can reach. This is my personal bubble. I live in this space here. That's mine. And we all need privacy, we all need our space. So when you can find this much room, just feel and take up your space. And you can actually take some time. It's a good way to stretch, it's like a bubble. Just feel how far you go in all directions. And while you're doing that, it's also a place to just get the kinks out of your body, because this is your bubble. And at this point, you have a boundary and maybe nobody's going to come in. So you can twist and turn, you can get rid of emotions, you can get rid of frustration in this safe place, imaginary walls. So that's the next. Take advantage and just see how you need to twist and turn and wiggle. Okay, safe space. 3 is you live with other people. And if you go outside, there's other people. So how do you have your safe boundary? Well, you can pretend like there's a door. You can invite people in or you can push them away. You have some control over this boundary. So if people are coming near you, you can say, slow down, please. Or you can say, hey, wait a second. Or so you can control somewhat what comes in, what comes out. So we try that. Once you know how much room you take up, then it's like your little house. You decide who's in and who's out. And you can literally push away or people. Just say, I need a little time or something. But you can decide who's in, who's out, and when. So those are the 3 things. Stabilize yourself. Begin to stabilize and make safe the space around you. And then 3, sort of control the border. And use your body. Hopefully you'll feel better. You'll get rid of emotions. You'll find your quiet, calm in the middle of any storm that comes. So I do hope this can help you. If you can, maybe a few takeaway points from this. One is not to be surprised. There are strong emotions and strong reactions that happen to being in close spaces and with such a serious threat. So expect that there's going to be emotional responses. And number 2, you also know it's going to pass. So how do you get through this time and develop your own resilience, strength, calm, and sense of feeling safe? In your body, we've learned a bit about relaxing in the body. We've learned a little bit about some imagery to use maybe in a kind of a relaxation response. We've learned about stretching the body, and we've learned about stabilizing, breathing, and establishing a sense of security, a base of security, and then a quiet place inside. With that, we also learned about establishing your boundaries, feeling safe, and you can say yes and no to people approaching you, so get back some control over your own space and your body. Develop the strength to cope with what you are already doing as best job we all can. All the best. Thank you.
The future. The existential threat brought by the pandemic awakens us to the reality that life may never return to what we assume to be normal or stable, and that it's going to be essential to learn effective ways to cope with natural and man-made disasters. Dance movement therapy is an inherently cross-cultural, connecting, expressing, and healing modality that can help us with life's new normals.